Great.
So I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Wood Point Public Works, Utilities and Environment Committee. And what time is 10 o'clock? We'll do the roll call. Trustee Caspero.
Here.
Trustee Manning.
Here.
Trustee Beagley, present. We also, we do have quorum. 3 trustees on the committee are present. We also have Scott Wolowski. Is that the right last pronunciation?
Phonetically, the W is pronounced like a B. Revelins. Yeah.
Oh, I never knew that. And Travis. Okay. At this time, we open up the meeting to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Yes.
Okay. And have you signed in and all that?
Oh.
I'll just take the
Okay.
address and name during the stated time.
Okay, and might I ask, can we, as public viewing, whatever, can we get a copy of the agendas?
They're
That
on
we-
the website.
No, I mean, right now for the meeting.
We would have to recess the meeting.
Here's
Oh,
the agenda.
okay, just so we can understand what sequence you're gonna go through stuff in the meeting. My name is Jane Derment. I live at 4350 Lighthouse Drive. And I sent an email to each of you with the what I was going to talk about, but I've got copies here. If you want to pass around and take them. Okay. So first of all, we have an open issue with the Public Works Committee that stemmed from a presentation in June of 2023 regarding our desire to do further shoreline protection work by our property. But since it was on the corner that butted up against the Johnson Family Trust property, we couldn't do anything without engaging them. And we've tried to reach them for 20 years through Wingspread, and that never worked. So we thought maybe the board could help us get in contact with them. So we presented, and the board referred that to this committee. And so recently I've been working with Scott as he's coordinating the culvert work. And Scott, you told me you were in touch with Helen Johnson.
Yep.
And so she's got kind of an understanding of what shoreline protection work she might be asked to do there. And he's going to try to keep us coordinated. I'm sorry, I'll turn that up so we could have one plan. So that's where that stands. We do have a couple of requests, and I say we, my husband Dave and I, plus other residents that have expressed some interest to us, that no plans be made to make any changes to the Lighthouse Road footprint without an understanding of, in a plan for protecting and preserving Lighthouse Drive from the shoreline erosion encroaching on Lighthouse Drive. And you've all seen what I'm speaking of. It's right behind Tom's Head on the map there. If you could point Tom to, south of Shoe Park down to the shores, where the road, right there, and down to the shores where the road was built, very close to the lake, the bluff. The bluff is 20 feet higher than the lake. In some places it's straight down, in some places it's gradual, in some places it's a combination of gradual and steep. And so if there's be some kind of a plan built for Lighthouse Drive, you really need to understand the challenges along Lighthouse as it pertains to the lake, because the lake keeps taking and bluffs continue to slough until they reach a 1-to-2 ratio, 1 foot down, 2 foot out a toe to hold it. And so the bluff will continue to slough. And then as it sloughs, it goes closer to the road. There's parts where it's almost to the drainage pipes already. And so we just want y'all to be aware and take that into account in any plan for Lighthouse. Beyond that, we're asking for that a public hearing, if that's the right term, be held for the residents, where you can notify all the residents and we can come to hear about the big plan, with the information that you already have. You already know it's $8.9 million in debt to, for the road and the water, and plans for debt, plans for water rates going up. The residents want to know about this, and it took me calls to 5 people and several weeks to gather the information that I have that's on the second page of the handout. And it's information that everybody wants to know about, and we'd like to hear it presented in a forum where we can ask questions and make comments and provide input. And so that's a request, and I'll make it to the full board as well. Third point is we want to see a least cost option for the road as you go through this process, and that's for the full picture as well as the East 4 Mile, and that is an as-is cost with the road in its current footprint without changes, so that we can be aware of the incremental cost of the 4 foot on each side pavement and any other engineering work that might have to be done relative to the road underlay, the drainage system, any movement of the drainage system, or raising of manhole covers and all the rest of that stuff. So we'd like to see that. And it's viewed that R.A. Smith could give you that information very easily and very quickly. So we're officially asking for it. We have questions. Oh, and I asked Rob Ludlow these questions. I asked a few people the question, and Rob suggested I ask you, Scott, to ask R.A. Smith the answer. Are we replacing the water main, or are we also replacing the service laterals that go up to the street valve? Do you know if we are replacing the laterals?
It wouldn't be inappropriate to ask a question during.
Oh, okay. I'll just leave it as a question. I put in the email so you've got it.
Yep.
We also want to know that whatever decisions are made for East 4 Mile Road, the plan does not determine or dictate the Lighthouse Drive plan. And we'll need to receive an official communication from the board stating that the Lighthouse Drive plan will not be predetermined or dictated by the East 4 Mile Road plan. And the other point is, and this is only because on the phasing of the projects, Scott, you had made one mention that the next phase would go to Maryburn. And when I thought about that, what we want to ask is that you look at Lighthouse Drive as an entity and look at all the challenges, especially where you've got this erosion problem along the lake, that you look at all that before you create a lighthouse plan, otherwise it's going to be disjointed. You want a full understanding of all the challenges. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and I did put an attachment here with, this is all we'd be looking for in a public hearing. Just tell us that it's 5.4 million for the water main, 3.5 million for the roads, 9 million in total. Your reserves don't cover this. We're going to debt. The tax increase is going to be $450 to $534 for $350,000 of property value. The water rate will increase. You have to go to public service. There's no referendum required for the tax increase. There's some grants, $250,000 you have for East 4 Mile Road. We want to know the specs, this 4 foot, 4 thing. We're looking for the as is without that. And if we don't have to do the service laterals, that could be very minimum damage to the road to do the job. So we want to understand that. And this tells you where I got the information. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as a point of order, for the public comment section, is there a time limit usually?
Usually,
Okay,
discretion to you.
right. And so we do want to have additional comment. Also, how do we handle any topics that aren't on the agenda?
Discretion to you.
Very good. All right. So is there any other public comment?
My comment is simple.
We need you to
I'm going to.
identify yourself.
I'm very familiar with the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Paul Ricco. I'm representing my wife and Emily Ricco. We live and own the property on 4226 Lighthouse Drive and other property in the shores. I want to express my appreciation for the work that the Public Works Department has been doing. I recognize there's been a lot of effort put into things in the village. My comment is very simple. We understand the value of having some more walking space on the side of Lighthouse Drive. We walk a couple times a day on there. We have a 14-year-old black lab. We enjoy that space. We are aware that there could be benefit to doing something, but we're asking that what's done be done with a lot of consideration and of the people that do own property there already. I'm hearing in some areas it may involve having to move the road farther onto people's property, potentially. I don't know. There's a lot of things being talked about because we're feeling like some of the communication flow from the people that are in the know as to what's really being discussed isn't getting to us. So I would appreciate a little bit more transparency in the communication. We also get around the state quite a bit. And this 411-4 is going to lead to a 30-foot wide slab of pavement. That's really wide for a quaint and charming area like Wind Point. We were traveling even as recently yesterday in State Highway 67 going through Fond du Lac near the Greenbush area is got 2-foot paved shoulders outside the white line and then a good gravel area. So I guess my only other comment is before it goes to 411, 11 and 4, what other options could be considered to create a little relief where people can walk and exercise, or if someone's riding a bike, they have some room to get out of the way of traffic without maybe going to that level of extreme, which might also not be completely appropriate for the feel of Wind Point and the way the village is now. I understand on 4 Mile Road, there's already a huge paved area on one side of the road. You can shift everything and probably get pretty close to that without actually expanding the paved area. When you start talking about Lighthouse Drive, that's a different story. And I'll also go on record and saying our bluff does have, I don't know of any issues on our bluff whatsoever on our property. And I do know that there was granite put down there many years ago as a response to something else that had happened in the village. That's all I have. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time.
Anyone else?
No, my name is Thomas Canals. I live at 4320 Lighthouse Drive. I really came today because I was made aware there's an open seat on the village board, and I threw my hat in the ring this week. I forwarded Travis a letter. So I just wanted to start becoming informed about what's going on in the village. A couple of comments as it pertains to this. I watch the kids from Prairie run up the Lighthouse Drive every day after school during the track season. And I'm afraid one of them is going to get hit. I used to be a runner before I got my hip replaced. Like they say, they walk all the time. I can't tell you how many times when I used to run the loop all the way around where I had to dive in the ditch or something because most of the time, no offense to the elderly, but elderly person was looking out at the lake or the golf course or making sure they weren't going to get hit with a shank drive at Shoop and veered off the road and almost took me out. So I don't understand why Prairie doesn't just send the kids through Wind Meadows, up the bike path, down where they have a safe area to run through the park and back that way. It makes no sense to me. And I've actually told a couple of the parents there that they should, I'm afraid someone will get it. So I understand the want or the desire to put some kind of bike path or walking path along the road there. Like I said at previous meetings, though, I just think if they're going to do anything like that, kind of echo Paul's statements that it should be done 4 by 11 by 4 seems pretty wide to me with the erosion on the lake side, as Jane stated. And if you can't do it all the way around, like I don't know what's going on the corner here where the new people just bought that house. But my understanding is the roadway is already on their property. You know, like you don't even have more roadway to do it there. That's the most dangerous spot is when you come around the corner there. So if you can't do it all the way around, it makes no sense to do it. Excuse my language, but I can't think of another term other than half-ass. Like just do it up Lighthouse, stop at the corner, and then continue on from there. So I just think there's hopefully a good common ground that everyone can find.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? I see Robert's on. Is Robert planning to make a comment? Any other people online? If
No,
not,
no, it's just Rob Lop now, just viewing things.
okay, Rob,
Thanks, guys.
thank you. So at this point, public comment is closed. We're moving on to reviewing the meeting minutes from the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Before we,
With the change, there's a double action. on
yeah,
that.
we'd like to strike item 3, which is a repeat of item 2, but it's an outdated version. So it has to do with the taking action on the GIS proposal, which was approved at the last meeting out of 5 proposals. So we'll strike that.
Yeah, if you just make the motion, just with the changes.
That would be making the motion to strike. Is that item 2?
Yeah.
3.
Or 2 or 3,
Yeah, it's 3. It's item 3.
Strike item 3. So the motion is to approve the minutes with the striking of item 3.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion carries 3-0. And now it's time, Scott, for your report.
Yeah, I just got a few things. So just to let everyone know, we had our Arbor Day event on April 25th. We planted a tree for the Arbor Day event on Thursday because of the anticipation of rain on Friday that they were talking about. So we planted a bald cypress in Lighthouse Park, which is by the path, by one of the benches. You'll see the brand new tree there with the tree bag on it. That replaced an old oak that was dead. And so we just basically replaced it with that. And then we bought 2 other trees, a Turkish filbert and a Northern Catalpa. And if you were on your way here, you would see the 2 cones that are in Village Green Park by the path. We called those in for locates to have the trees planted there along the path. So, and that kind of ties into the Tree City USA that, you know, since we are technically Tree City USA now, for our first annual year, that we have an Arbor Day event that we're required to do to upkeep that recognition, and that we plant trees and maintain trees and do all the things that we're supposed to do within our per capita. So just to let everybody know about that. Then also the recycling report was submitted. That is an annual report that we have to do every year. So we submitted that. So we'll be getting money back. I don't know the exact amount.
Is that a DNR?
Yep, everything is basically DNR, but yeah, it's a DNR report. And then to let everyone know that we completed the requested tree trimming in North Bay. As you all know, we kind of do stuff for North Bay. We have a contract with them based on their requests. So we had a request from one of their trustees that they were getting multiple complaints from trees that were hanging down in the traffic lanes in North Bay, and they were damaging the trees and damaging the vehicles. So we went in there and created the 14-foot height on the roadside. They don't have a sidewalk side, so we didn't have to adhere to that. We got about 3/4 the way through the village before we were kicked out. We had several residents that were apparently not informed of us showing up, even though we let them know exactly what we were doing to the board, and they were supposed to announce to everybody what we were doing. They didn't appreciate it, so they kicked us out. So we got about 3/4 the way through before we didn't finish. But we do invoice them and stuff, so Monica has that. And then a couple other things. So the DPW has been getting many complaints and requests to repair their ditch because the ditches aren't draining properly. It's just over years of sediment, and people plant things and put things in the right of way that stop the flow and doesn't allow it to go where it needs to go. And it's just a lot of stuff that's in over time that's in the ditches. So they're not draining, and they're creating algae and all kinds of issues in the ditch, and people want that corrected. So today was a great day for it. We went and did a drive around to see where all these issues are. But we've been getting lots of complaints about that. And the other one that we're working on is coming up with some language by a request for culvert responsibility, and that will be coming to the committee later on once I get that figured out. But it's more of in line with the connection to the ditches and the responsibility of who has the authority to maintain the ditches, like reditching it, and the culvert itself that's underneath people's driveways. Like, is it the village responsibility to clean those out? Because leaves get trapped in there and get clogged and freeze, and then you get the spring rains and it hasn't unthawed yet, which isn't the case today, but and it doesn't drain or it doesn't flow and backs up and stuff like that. So we don't currently have any language that defines that as to whose that is. So I'm working on that. And then the last thing is that we have interviews next 2 weeks from now for seasonals. We have 2 applicants, both of whom live in Wind Point. And so they are interested in working for the summer before they go to college.
Is there one position or 2? One position,
But one will take one.
but that's approved. One position is approved.
One was approved during the budget process.
Yeah, the goal was to get somebody on a more. We need someone that's here a lot more than what was in the past couple years where they were here for like 2 hours a day.
Mhm.
We need somebody more often than that to get done what we need to get done. Help us out.
Scott, I was interested, and maybe Travis, you could help me on this. Are you able to provide just a broad overview, given the public comment, where we are on the project with 4 Mile Road, which is really what is in an engineering stage? Nothing has been decided, and all the discussions that the committee has had.
Good.
As long as the chair's fine with it, yeah.
Okay. Like in specific.
In
like
general, I'm
what
just talking about what
answering
the process
questions
is.
Probably we're at about, well, we passed the 30% mark with the agreeable to go with the multiple options that were submitted at the last board meeting and at the last committee meeting. So the design was able to move forward after that, after the option was voted on and picked. So they are able to move forward. So they're probably at about, I would say about 45 to 50% of the design right now, give or take. But we will be having a public informational meeting regarding the project at the 60% mark. We will have a public informational meeting, and that will be the letters will be sent out to the directly affected residents for
This stretch
the
of road
project.
again, just for my clarification, is from where to where?
From Main, well, road wise, it's from Main Street to Lighthouse,
So that's the
excluding the westbound lane from Birch Creek to Main Street, which is technically Caledonia. So we've been in talks with them, cooperating with them to work within our project to do the road and redo some of their ditching and storm drainage issues. But the utilities start from, the water utility starts from Valley Trail and goes to Lighthouse, because Caledonia owns the water main from Main Street to our meter pit at Valley Trail, and then it becomes the Village of Wind Point's. So that is, it's there, and that runs on the south side of the road. And then the storm drain, or the storm lines, are just where applicable, that they need them, where the ditches can't provide the necessary pitch to get it to where it's got to go, and you need to utilize storm pipe to do it. So that's all coming back in the design, and that will be discussed at the 60% mark with the public informational meeting, once the letters go out to the residents that are affected, so they can see what is being done and how it's being done on their particular property.
And so
Whether
this
the
is
culvert
4
needs to
Mile
be,
Road.
4 Mile Road. That's all we're concerned about right now is 4 Mile Road.
And this
I
is
just
an
want to get
engineering
that done.
study, and the decisions or choices that had to be made were to give them direction to
Yes.
complete their study, which is to present, then to get public comment on.
Correct. Yes, and how it impacts them directly. So
I just wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
understood the process.
So,
that-
yeah, so there's a lot of residents that don't know that their culvert's gonna be ripped out and their approach is gonna be re-poured and their ditch is gonna be redone and stuff, and they will see basically from the 60% mark, how it's gonna affect them and how it's gonna look. And
But
then
it's for
that's
that
when
stretch of
and it
road,
would
correct?
be, yeah, and yeah, just for this project from Lighthouse to Maine on 4 Mile Road.
But
And
does not include light.
does not include Lighthouse, no,
Okay.
we're not even at that point yet.
Okay.
So I want them to concentrate on getting this
And,
done.
and what even started this? I thought I heard something about water main breaks and.
Okay, so we had this conversation this morning I had with Tom. So the goal of the board for when I was hired, I was told that my number one goal was to get the water utility under control. Because so much money was being wasted and we are constantly in the red, right?
Mhm.
The red was the bad. We're constantly in the red every quarter for paying Caledonia for water. We're 50,000, 30,000, Monica can attest to
And
that.
that's due to
That we are
leaks,
in the hole
breaks.
because of breaks and leaks and mismanagement or whatever the case may be. I don't know. That was my job to figure this out and get it under control. So thankfully, in the last 2 quarters, it's been a wash. So what comes in and we pay for goes out and is paid for. So the village isn't using the
Well, I guess what I
reserves to pay for
understood-
that money.
What I
So-
understood was that there were a lot of breaks. And when
Yeah,
you look
and
at that.
there was a lot on Lighthouse.
Mhm.
That had the most of them. However, our previous administrator filed for a grant to pay for the road reconstruction through the county, through the LRIP funds or the LRIP grant, was a local road improvement project. And was submitted for that, and the village was awarded that money. So but he picked 4 Mile from Main Street to Lighthouse. That wasn't really necessarily where I was gonna start, but it was gonna get done regardless, nonetheless. So we just kind of flip-flopped and
And it
instead
has
of
to do
doing
with-
Lighthouse first, we did 4 Mile first.
It has
So
to do
that's
with
why
the
it's done.
aging of the.
Yeah, the system is 60 years old and it has multiple breaks, and there are several individuals on Lighthouse Drive, particularly by the Hollow Creek and Lighthouse area, that are fed up with and voice their opinion every time we have one. They voice their opinion on how they are unappreciative of being inconvenienced on a regular basis for the outage of water and stuff like that.
And so we've got a starting point, and that's what
We've got a
this
starting
engineering study is about, and it deals with 4 Mile to Lighthouse. And it would be followed up then.
Yeah, and then there was other factors involved, like we had a sanitary sewer survey that's done by the DNR. It's done every 3 years. And basically the DNR came down on us and said, you need to fix your issues, otherwise we're taking over. So there were multiple issues that weren't being done, like exercising and maintaining of your system, which wasn't being done or wasn't providing the records for that. There was the wells that were an issue. And then the other issue was that they, in their opinion, in the DNR's opinion, that the rates were not being up to the standard of where the water rates needed to be able to manage the system properly. And they suggested that that get fixed, otherwise they were gonna take over. So
So-
that was the first issue as to the increase of the water rate was because of the DNR.
But from what I heard you say then, so there's at a 60% point, which is what, how far away do you think that is? We're at 30?
About a month, I think,
Public
from
hearings
that
are
from
in the-
that schedule calendar, it
Early
was
schedule.
sometime in May, late May, early June was gonna be the first public informational meeting.
And there are several of those, 3, 4 of them.
There's like 2. There's one at 60% and one at 90%.
So what's
But
the-
at the 60% is more of a hands-on, so the plan would be distributed out. And there'd be multiple players like myself and Travis and the representatives from RA Smith, maybe a couple board members if they choose. And they would sit at this public informational meeting and they would discuss the project and then have question and answer conversation with the residents after the presentation of what
This
it
would
would be.
include the cost cost of the project and everything else, other than right away and ditches and stuff? What's gonna be the content of this public hearing?
All the
Design.
above, design, cost, because we have cost estimations, and I think it was provided that it was a class 3 estimate, which puts them in the 10% plus or minus range of where their estimate is as to where it comes in for the actual cost of the project. So it'll be about there. And then yeah, it would be design, impact on residents, impact on the village, any question that they want to ask.
So it's not gonna be all for 4 Mile Road, there's gonna be other people who are gonna be impacted by these rate increases too, so.
Well, that would have nothing to do with the design, or RA Smith would be the PSC water increase. That would just be a question that residents can call me up and ask me about it, or call up Travis and ask him about it.
Or they can go to the PSC public hearing.
Yeah, or they can go to the public hearing and ask about the increase of water and why and all that other kind of
So
stuff
they're
if
gonna
they
be
choose.
notified, Other than the people on 4 Mile Road, there's gonna be a public notice for the rest of the village.
Same as process as always, public hearing in the paper, public hearing on the website, and notice on the public bulletin like we do with everything.
And anyone can attend, correct?
Yeah.
It's just not those people affected.
Yeah,
Obviously, the people on the 4 mile stretch are gonna have an immediate interest in it, but everyone.
But
Should
it's
be.
for the 4 Mile Road project only.
for the public information meeting, yeah, the design, the construction, the impact, the inconvenience, all of the above, what the plans are, how it's gonna impact residents and stuff like that, yes. That would be all part of that informational meeting.
What I heard was that there's an interest in understanding, obviously, this is at a design engineering standpoint, nothing's been bid out yet, nothing's been
No.
awarded, nothing's been
No.
decided. All the hearings are gonna be held, all the input will be afforded.
Yeah.
But I guess it does, you would think, and it's logical that what is done on 4 Mile will extend around to some extent. So they've probably looked and have some ideas, and that'll be, I'm sure, part of the discussion.
Yes, so when we sent out the RFP to try to get a consultant awarded to start the design for the road and for the utility and stuff like that. When the bid was awarded, my conversation with them was, the intent is to do the road from 4 Mile Road through Lighthouse Drive and through 3 Mile Road for our collector road and our distribution line, because that's our distribution line. It's the largest line that we have in the village. It's the oldest line we have in the village. That carries all the water to all the subdivisions and everything like that. Everything branches off of that. So I said, when you are I told them, I said, so in your design, just so you're aware, I said, we are having these other projects come down the line. So whatever you design, just make sure there's some natural flow, whatever that would be, just to have the natural flow of whatever you design to incorporate Lighthouse Drive and the culvert that we have to run into an issue of, and 3 Mile Road and everything else. I didn't define anything needed to be anything. I just said, just remember that that is part of the big grand scope of things. And whatever you design, whenever you design, that would just keep that in mind. That's all I said.
Another question on the, is there a focal point for all these water main breaks? Are they in a certain area?
Concentrated in a certain area.
Yeah, I mean, we have a map on the wall, but over time, over the last 30 years since they've been doing the records for it, there is some concentration points where we have a lot more than other places. Yeah.
Are those shallower?
No,
Okay.
no, not necessarily. They're just depends on, there's all kinds of factors. There's factors on, like in the 60s when this pipe was put in, it was crap pipe.
It was bad, defective, right?
It was bad from the start. Milwaukee's dealing with, a lot of people are dealing with the same thing. Milwaukee's dealing with the same thing.
Corrosion.
The iron was bad, something to do with the war or something like that, that they needed the iron, so they put less in the pipe, and it's just not as good as before that. And people are having issues with late 50s to 60s cast iron pipe. Everybody's has the same issue. So it's just, it degrades faster. The corrosive soils have a lot to contribute with it. Lack of maintenance has a lot to do with it. It's just a lot of different things. And maintenance meaning, like, you'll see us like last year, we were out flushing hydrants. That it's like every 2 years or twice a year, you're supposed to do that kind of stuff. You're supposed to bring good water in and flush out the bad water, take care of the dead ends. So the water's not sitting there just, that kind of stuff. You're supposed to exercise the valves. There's all these things that we're required to do, not that we want to do, we're required to do by the PSC.
Are we still in the red? Are we collecting enough money that it's the same? as-
Well, it isn't about the money thing yet. It's just about containing our system and getting our system right.
Yeah, I was just
So
wondering that.
fixing the leaks, not letting them run for long periods of time, meaning months on end,
when the cost
and
of repairs-
identifying where they are and repairing them and getting everything watertight, so to speak, and controlling our loss, because our loss was contributed from when it goes through the meter pit in Caledonia, it's charged. Caledonia is charging us for that. Every gallon that goes through their meter, we're getting charged. Then it goes through our system, and then it's not charged to the resident until it goes through their meter. So there's a gap in between Caledonia and every resident's meter. And when we lose water from incidences, I call them, or just joint leaks and stuff like that, that's all unaccountable water that is not charged for.
It's still there.
Caledonia still charges.
We have to pay for it.
Are we still there?
No, we're the last 2 quarters we were doing really well. And we were actually I think for 2 quarters we're in the plus. So we actually were doing really well, because in essence, what you're trying to do for your utility, you don't want to be giving away a lot of money for no reason at all. You want to, as bad as it sounds, you want to accumulate money like a little savings account, because you want to be able to address some of these unforeseen issues or replacements and everything else. So you can upgrade your system, no different than your house. You upgrade your system to make it better as it goes on, instead of allowing it to get to a certain age. And I think cast iron pipe, if I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere in the 50 to 70 year range where they give it a life expectancy.
That's
of.
our system essentially.
Yeah, it's somewhere around 60.
But I mean, it's cast
65
iron
years old.
throughout.
Yeah, cast
Today,
iron.
there are probably
copper.
better materials. You would analyze the soil, you would make sure that the pipe you're putting in there is not going to degrade.
Correct. So what we've already done, and maybe people have seen it before the project started, there's several reasons why, but we do core samples. So a company would come in, they drill a hole in the road about this big, they take a core down and they take a sample of the ground and everything else that's the base for the road. They take even below that, and they take a sample of what the soils are like underneath, and they incorporate that into their design for the road and for the utilities. But people learn, and they get better at their craft, and they get better at what they do and how they design or how they make the material and stuff like that. So the pipe itself is just a better quality than it was 60 years ago. People make advancements where they wrap the pipe in this special plastic stuff that helps protect the pipe longer, so it's not affected by the soils, whether the municipality decides to go with plastic or ductile iron or whatever the case may be. And it's just better product, better installation, better design.
So that brings us then basically to where we are today. I mean, we had some preliminary discussions, but we're going to be reviewing 3 action items that are just extensions of all the ducts that have to be lined up in order to have a project of this magnitude. The engineering study
It all comes to
be
mind.
completed and
It's all about money.
reviewed.
Yep.
And budgeted.
Who's paying for it and who's not? That's what it is.
So I guess that was what I was hoping to get, was just some background so that there's that context for
Mhm.
why we're here, where we are.
May I?
Yeah.
I just, that to reiterate that we have put in the budget for this year to only design 4 Mile Road.
Right.
We have not put anywhere
This
in
is
the
the
budget.
design.
Yeah,
It's,
we haven't even paid for 4 Mile Road, and the board could say no at any point in time and say, we're not doing any of this. We have only paid for the design of this process so far. We have not paid or have thought about Lighthouse Drive yet until the budget process will begin for 2026. I just want to make that clear.
that process is starting
The 6th, May 6th.
May 6th. So and that's for 2026.
Correct.
And so we're just talking about the design engineering study.
And then, yeah,
For
and
Lighthouse, I mean,
It
for
talks
the.
for
4
Lighthouse
mile
Drive
road.
won't even start till 2026.
Right.
And that's the.
Well,
Well,
maybe a couple months before 26.
but yeah, but the process of really getting down to the
Yeah.
issues and slope studies and all that have not even crossed anyone's plate yet because we have no funding for 4 mile or for Lighthouse Drive yet.
Yeah, I can't ask the R.A. Smith consultants to even talk about Lighthouse because, you know, they're gonna want to get paid. We don't have the money to pay them to have those kind of conversations, to look at that kind of stuff yet. So can't take away from what we need to do for 4 Mile Road to do Lighthouse when we need to concentrate on 4 Mile Road first. Make sure that gets done.
You know, the way the grant was obtained, which is really wonderful, to get the money that we do have for 4 Mile.
Mhm.
What has to happen in order to accommodate that for Lighthouse and all the way to Maine?
I can take it unless you.
Grants are
Go ahead.
distributed by the Department of Transportation. It depends on state funding, budget allocations. If you're watching the state budget process at all, they might not pass the state budget this year.
Right.
So it depends on how much funding is in DOT. And it depends on the road too. There are certain road qualifications that you need to meet and expectations. But we do get transportation funding from the DOT. And the more road projects we do, the more funding we get in our budget. So if you continue to improve your road quality, the more money you'll see in that line item of the budget. So the more you invest, the more money you get. But within grants, it all depends on the state and what they're going to offer and what kind of roads they're going to offer and the classification of the road too. Sometimes our roads don't classify for that type of grant. So
Yeah, there's a lot of different kind of grants, but some we qualify and some we don't, just based off the criteria and the outline of the grant itself.
And it's very hard to get a grant in the scope of the village right now is because the median household income is way above the median household income in the state of Wisconsin. So the competitiveness of grants are very hard for our area, and water main grants are very hard because we don't have lead in our water mains, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So water main prioritization for grants are to those that communities have lead in them. So, and it's hard to get grants for repairs. Repairs for construction are hard for in the scope of grants, but if we keep up our infrastructure and continue to improve that quality, we'll get more funding from the state and our transportation aid. And shared revenue will hopefully maybe increase, but I don't have much faith in the state legislature to do that. So, but that's unfortunate. So we'll have to keep, hopefully everyone in this room can talk to the legislature and ask for more funding for roads and shared revenue because we need it. Local municipalities are suffering all over.
Is there anything on the horizon that was comparable to the grant that was awarded for 4 Mile that could be available?
Not that I've seen yet.
No, I mean, the
Usually that's-
LRIP is pretty much standard, I think, every 2-3 years that they hand out, but you know, everybody it goes by counties, so everybody in the Racine County can apply. I mean, I'm not saying that we couldn't get it again. I'm just saying that we just got 250 grand or so from them. The chances of being awarded the next phase for that is probably a little bit less than good. Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to give it to Wind Point every year or every 3 years. But you know, I mean,
But that's the reality.
it's a reality. But honestly, when I went to the last one 2 years ago, Wind Point and one other community were the only ones that applied for it. So, I mean, some people just don't for whatever, because they don't qualify or whatever the case may be. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for your report and your comments. I think it's helpful just for the background. So we have 3 items on the agenda. The first item, action item, is to review and possibly take action on an ordinance regarding the right-of-way tree language. Would you review that?
Yeah.
yeah. So I just needed this, and like Trustee Herb said, a lot of this is implemented because of the constructions project or projects coming forward, and we just need clarification because this all involves money. So we had a policy that was written in 2015. We did contact our lawyer and ask about policies and whether or not they're legally binding or can you do things, and it was more explained of like an in-house type of way that you want to do things. So it's not, if you get one resident that would like to contradict your opinion on a tree and the removal or the trimming or whatever the case may be, we had no legal grounds to.
There was no standard,
Yeah, we had nothing to go out, say one way or another. So
more arbitrary than it
yeah,
was.
so going forward with these construction projects, there are going to be trees that are in the right of way that may or may not need to be removed or dealt with, and we need to know how to address them.
Okay,
Is it going to involve like a construction project that the village has the right to do whatever they need to do, but then the village pays for it out of the construction costs instead of bearing that cost onto the homeowner?
so as I
it's
understand it,
questions
then,
like
these three issues were attorney, so Eric Larson,
Correct.
to draft ordinances, to formalize it so that it's not arbitrary or,
Yeah.
and so that it is specified. So it gives us a foundation so that we can, not only is it open and reviewable and
Mhm.
consistent, but then it's enforceable from that.
Right.
standpoint.
So you have the option to approve it as is, correct?
Yeah.
Or
this
if you want to
ordinance
make
is,
any necessary changes, right?
is ready to go to the
Yeah.
village board to sign to adopt it.
If you approve it as is.
So we had some preliminary discussions in the last meeting that led to getting to this point. This is the first time we've actually seen the ordinances.
Correct.
I don't know if you have any reaction,
No.
Charlie?
My understanding, when, before we actually saw something like this, Eric had to look at it first.
And he's generated it. This is his product.
So,
This is his product, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so there's the red copy, the red highlight area, and those are those are changes or modifications, additions to what had been a policy. This is
So this
form-
is in the current ordinance
Okay. So this is a revision of an existing ordinance.
that we have currently.
Okay, and as are the other two?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, except the construction.
Yeah, that's
that's a,
That's a separate.
that's just for bidding purposes. So everybody, all the bidders are. on
that's
the same
standard
page.
specs. Yeah, it's not an ordinance. Okay, so we have this. So is there any discussion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve it as it sits, and it's an unnumbered ordinance at this time, so I'll just say that it's the ordinance regarding portions of Wind Point Municipal Code related to trees in the right of way.
Those in favor?
I,
Aye. So the motion carries 3-0. And the, this then goes to the board.
Correct, and that's when it'll get a number. Yeah. So
Okay.
it'll be on the agenda for next Thursday.
So as with trees, then the next ordinance is to address the laterals
Was this a policy
as well.
turning into an ordinance?
No, I couldn't find this at all,
Oh, okay.
defining who's responsible for what. And it's typically in every municipality that has a utility, they define who owns and who doesn't.
And it's typical that the utility runs up to the curb stop.
99% of them,
That's all I.
they
needed
run
to
from
know.
including the main up to the right of way line, which is typically where your cap for your curb stop is, that the village or the utility owns that portion. And that's so they can have control over what gets replaced and what doesn't get replaced. And so you don't have an individual that per se, like say, you get a brand new road put in and they decide if they had control and they decided not to do it. And then a year later, they're digging up your brand new road to repair a service that could have been done. So that's kind of why they have the utility has control over that, of the stuff in the right of way.
I had a question, and it had to do with, I understand the water laterals and the stop and that definition. What about the stormwater laterals? Like this is on the,
So like, for instance, like in some municipalities, they have curb and gutter and they have storm line. And what typically happens in a construction project is that every home gets a stub off the main and runs up to the right of way and we cap it off. And then the homeowner has the option of hooking up to it if they choose, or if they don't, they don't. But it would be up to the right of way line. There's no valve that, like for water, there's no valve. It's just a pipe.
A connection.
It's just a pipe connection. That's it.
That's capped.
Well,
And so these don't exist currently.
they do not exist currently.
And so, and actually that becomes this is an advancement of, and an accommodation to better management of,
Yeah, because typically what happens is that contractors come in because somebody wants to bury their sump pump. They don't like that black corrugated pipe on top of
Rain
their
downspouts.
grass or their downspouts, and they want to connect to the pipe because they actually have a pipe in their front of their yard. They don't have a ditch. And what happens a lot of times is the contractor will just take a hammer. Will just take a hammer and punch a hole through it, and then stick the pipe in there and walk away. And then it becomes the utilities issue 3 years later when the ground's sinking or whatever the case may be.
Is there a permit for that? I mean, if.
is there a what?
If you hook your.
Yes,
Your
we just created that like a couple months ago.
You have leaves in your rain gutters and that goes into the system, doesn't that cause an issue?
It can, yeah, it can. But typically the pipe from the downspouts and from your sump pump is a lot larger. So whatever mass is in your downspout, once it gets to the pipe, will be able to flow a lot more freely. But I mean, you still have that potential. So some people put a T in there so they can access it to clean it out later on down the line if they choose. There's all those kinds of issues.
Just snake it out, that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But I mean, typically that's what we just had. I just lately over the last year, there's just been a lot more residents that have requested that. So I think we changed the permit to accommodate that. So somebody would actually go out and look at it to make sure that it's done correctly before they bury it. But I'm just going to say there's a lot of C words out there that aren't very honest. So they kind of show up afterwards, don't come and get the permit. And when we're out and about,
See where this contract.
yeah, when we come out, go out and about and we
I
see
wanted to
them,
clarify that.
and then we ask them, what are you doing? And then, kind of catch them in the act.
So this helps us tremendously to get control of what isn't really under control.
And it gives the resident
Standardized, again, it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
peace of mind knowing that, what we're responsible for and what we pay for and what they don't have to worry about. Yeah.
What are the cost of the teas to come off that name?
For the water,
Yeah. No, for the storm store.
for the storm.
For a connection.
Cost of PVC. So
Oh, it's just a PVC tee
Yeah,
with
it's
a
just-
cap.
yeah, it's a PVC
Okay.
saddle that typically they drill a hole and then they put the saddle on there. And
We're
so
not
they
burying
can
any
connect to it.
bronze for these people.
No, it's all PVC.
And with the, how is that then located in the future? I understand, okay, so we've got a 4 mile project. where we've
Yeah.
got that's, and this will be,
Typically
Maybe
as
accommodated
built, as built will do it, or you can request tracer wire to be attached. I mean, that's what they do for water pipe. When you decided to go with plastic and not go with ductile iron, they run a tracer wire on there and then they have the tracer wire come up at some point somewhere so you can attach to it and find out exactly where it goes. But typically with Stormline, as built work just fine. I mean, it's they're going to run storm for the most part on both sides of the road. If they're going to do it, they're not, because we don't really want anything in the road utility wise. So it's going to run in the ditch and stuff. So it's going to be a little 10-foot piece of pipe. I mean, it's not.
But
gonna be
you'll
tough
have it
to
on a
find.
new GIS system too.
But
right?
yeah, so we would be able to,
the
yeah,
locating.
and we
That
would
was
be
my
able
point.
to know, if a resident comes up in 2 years from now and say, hey, I'd like to hook up to that. Where is it? We could go out. and
We're
find
trying to get into the 21st century.
Yeah,
Go from
it. Exactly.
no information to a lot of information that's going to be very productive and helpful for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons when there are repairs and so forth.
I would
Any
like
other
to-
questions?
I'd like to make a motion on the ordinance to repeal and recreate portions of Wind Point Municipal Code related to ownership of utility laterals. That's the one we're on, or did I go ahead?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Is there a second? Those in favor? Aye. So the motion carries 3-0. All right, and so those were the two ordinances, and then Scott, you mentioned, then this is, yeah, indeed, standard and specs for the construction
Yeah, that was requested by our consultant because when they go out for bid, when we get to that process.
We're not at that process.
And we're not there yet, but when we go out for that, the contractor has an idea of exactly what our village is requiring. So when they submit a bid, everybody's on the same page. If they decide they want to go above and beyond, it's all totally up to them. But everybody's bidding on the same thing. So you don't have somebody coming up and saying, hey, I bid on this. This guy bid on this. Well, it's not the same. And that's why I'm higher and all that kind of stuff. So it just gives you the standard minimum requirements that the village holds. So if the village decides that they want to do something different, now is the time to change it.
So how was this generated? Again, we had a pre-discussion, the last committee meeting.
Yeah, it's
You've revised it, and this is the
yeah.
current draft.
Yeah, it's just basically, I mean, I didn't reinvent the wheel. Basically took a couple other municipalities, looked over what they did and what they had, and just kind of massaged and customized it to fit the village. And what I thought the village may or may not want to do. They may decide that you want to do something else. Like for instance, I don't know, for argument's sake, the hydrants. I mean, if you're sick of looking at green and yellow ones and you want to see red ones, and that's the standard, is the red hydrant from Watrous at this particular size. Or somebody feels very strongly about copper services, and with all the issues that's going on with copper now, and decide that that's not what you want the village to be, and you don't want copper services, this is where you define it. Or if the new one is, because copper is very, very expensive right now. It's super expensive. So that's going to drive your cost up if that's the standard that you want to choose. If you decide that you want to go plastic, that's going to be a lot less, and the cost of the project is going to be a lot less. But there are certain things that go along with plastic pipe that certain people don't like. They come out with all this PFAs and all this other stuff that runs through plastic and is a byproduct, not a byproduct, but gets carried off from the constant running of water through a plastic, and it carries certain contaminants or how they construct the pipe. And over time, they'll probably find something that was wrong with it 20 years from now. And who knows? So that's pretty much what they thought of lead, which we don't have, and copper, which we do. Every resident in the village has copper.
So the hope is that this is inclusive at this point.
Mhm.
And are there any, I mean, obviously you include them, but I want to ask the question. I mean, are there any things that perhaps the consultant is going to say, well, you've already kind of got some read from them as to what they're looking for. This is standard, I understand, and you cover all
Minimum standard.
minimum standards. Yeah.
Yep.
And
So
so
they might recommend, based off the bid that they put together, or the proposal they
some
put together,
modifications.
some modifications to that, bearing on, like if we had the minimum requirement was copper services, and at the time we're doing the construction, copper shoots up and it's 10 times the cost. They might in the bid there, or the proposal, they'll say, we're gonna not do copper and we're gonna do plastic instead, based on your.
And those are all variants that have to be approved.
Correct.
And that's the whole purpose for this.
That's the whole
Is
purpose.
to put the list together of what is required and what they bid on.
Yep.
This is not putting it out for bid. This is
No.
preparing it for that.
Yep.
So what is
Exactly.
what's all the red in here? What was that?
There are changes.
Yeah, I think it's changes.
Based on what?
Yeah, these are ones that you can look at to see if this is truly what you want or not. Because some of these are different, and I just felt that some of these maybe they were either changes or maybe for discussion, like the one I'm seeing, number 2, water main shall be installed in the terrace. However, you can put it in the street if there's conflicts with other utilities and you just can't fit it in there. Is that what you want? Increases the cost later on down the line.
Especially for repairs and all that.
If you're cutting in the road, it's a lot different than digging in a ditch. Cost, it goes up a lot. So
And that says terrace.
Yeah, it says terrace. Basically, that's the area between the edge of the pavement to the right of way is considered the terrace area. Water main minimum size, I changed that to 6 inch, depending on the area.
What do we have currently?
You have a lot of 8. And that might be a little overkill, but it's just a minimum standard. And then the other
But
one
8 is more expensive.
It is, yeah,
I'm
for
sorry.
everything. Everything.
It's
Every time
not-
you repair something, you add something, and between 6 inch, 8 inch, 10 inch, and 12 inch, they all cost more. For
For our system, 6 should be adequate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the alpha restraints is like the new Fandango thing, but it's good. It cuts down on the other pieces that you need to add to it.
What is that
Um,
specifically?
It's kind of like if anybody's familiar with like shark bite and stuff like that. It's basically like that. So in the day, you had to put a sleeve on there, and you had to put bolts through, and it compresses everything together. And then they came out with mega lugs, and mega lugs are kind of like alpha restraints, but not really. And they pinch into the pipe, and that holds it in place so it doesn't work its way out. The gasket doesn't work its way out. And now the alpha restraints are actually built onto the product itself. So the hydrant actually has a restraint on there. So all you do is you just push the pipe in, and that's it. And it's done. You don't have to do anything else. It's fast, quick. I think it's the same cost. It's just easier. And everything when you're involving a project of a mile long, like 4 Mile Road is, and you're putting in all these gates, and you're putting all these main gates, and you're putting all these hydrants on and stuff, time is money. And if you give the contractor the ability to utilize this stuff, they're going to get done quicker and faster and cheaper than having to do it. And it all adds up in time. All that time adds up, which they need to account for. So there wasn't that many changes. Like, I think a big one for that you should discuss. I did drive it out, but I didn't see a lot that were that had it. But when we do a project, do you want to replace all the? I would say 95% of the approaches are going to have to be removed to accommodate a better transition from the road, which is most of the time is going to be pulverized. So there's going to be an extra 3 inches of gravel, and then you're going to put 4 inches of asphalt on top of that with a profile of 2% going from the center of the road to the edge of pavement. And it's just going to be a higher up, and the existing driveways are for the existing road, and it's just going to change. A lot of our roads are flat. There is no crown. And you can probably notice that today when you're driving through a lot of puddles when you're driving on the road. And so when you put the crown on there, it's going to adjust that where that transition lies. So you're going to have to take away some of the approaches to make that transition a better transition. I went through that in another project, and it was a nightmare. A lot of people complain when they drive into their driveway and they bottom their car out where they never bottomed their car out before. They're pretty ticked off, especially people that drive low to the ground cars like Porsches and stuff. So they get very angry.
So
right?
this is 8
I
inch
don't
you're talking
correct.
about.
So I have on here for the minimum standard that all driveway aprons shall be replaced with asphalt.
Mhm.
There's some people that have concrete driveways that aren't going to be very appreciative of having a asphalt driveway approach, but obviously with an asphalt driveway approach compared to a concrete one and replace back in kind, so to speak, that contractor who's doing the job has to bring in a completely different crew for the construction site and a completely different phase of the project to have that put in, and you're going to pay for it.
And a substantially different
Skill set, cost of concrete is a lot different than doing the road and the asphalt. So that's a big change and it's a big cost. Like I said before, everything is about money. So if you decide that the minimum standard is asphalt, that's what we're putting back is asphalt. Now you have the option of a resident saying, hey, I want my concrete road put or my concrete drive put back in. But now you're starting to get into those conversations of, now, if you want a concrete back in, you're going to have to pay the difference in cost. And that isn't going to go over very well at all. So it's something to think about as far as like that goes. Like, do you want to replace back in kind to what was there? That's your choice. It's a cost. I mean, I dealt with in a prior project of an individual that had stamped concrete.
Oh,
I can't match that. You know, when they throw the dye in it, I can't match that. But we tried, and it was a fight that we were putting it back asphalt, and he's like, no, I want asphalt next to in my driveway next to it. Looks terrible. And I agreed, but you know, what am I supposed to do? I can't, if I'm gonna treat you like that, I gotta treat you and everybody like that. You know, I can't just single out one person and say, yeah, we'll do it for you.
How's the differential handled? The idea of,
That's
is that a language?
That's an accounting thing, I think.
this
That's
is,
just, I think, just gives we're gonna put it back as asphalt. If somebody wants it done a certain way, whatever that cost would be by the contractor to do it.
That isn't
would
for
be a
this
conversation
document
with
to
Travis.
specify, but yeah.
Yeah,
There's
if
that
you would even
option.
allow that, or if you just know this is what we're doing, we're not going down that road where everybody's doing their own little thing unless you decide you want to put it back in kind. Like I said, probably 90% of the driveways in the village are asphalt. There's some that are not, mostly in certain subdivisions.
I think this is a topic that could be addressed in the public hearing, or
Sure.
will be addressed in the public.
Yeah, this
hearing.
is standards. It's
And this is a specification.
right.
I'll
Like
make,
It's
per
a
project?
minimum specs.
Like per project that it would be handled on, like we would address a project like it's all driveway aprons would be asphalt, but since we're in I'm almost positive, like in the shores, that most of the driveways are concrete.
It's 50-50.
Yeah, so maybe you address that, if we were gonna do that road, we would address that differently in the bid process
yeah, this relates.
and do it differently. I
The
guess.
thing
this
is,
You're not
relates
gonna be
before, although it
going into
doesn't
the
say that.
shores, right?
Oh, I'm just using that as an example.
I'm just
But I
thinking
don't
like,
know.
This
the
isn't a-
shores, for example, has a concrete pan already, so if they
Yeah.
repave the road, you're already gonna be doing concrete to replace the pan and then up into the.
Maybe not, maybe it goes back asphalt, which people don't like either.
Well,
so
there's slight
Yeah.
curve in there, so anyway, just, that would be a complicated one.
that
Okay.
Fortunately,
So-
that's not happening.
Yeah.
I'd like us just to focus on, I think you're on the right track, that this is the minimum.
Oh, and the other one was insurance. That was beyond me. I don't know what the village would require minimally as insurance for contractors to come in and get jobs.
And so what is
That's
supplied there?
beyond
I mean, who created that? You did.
This is off of other municipalities.
Okay.
That this is their
And
standard.
so that would be
Which
something
I'm
that the
assuming
FIC
is-
would want to look at, or how does that work?
Well, Eric reviewed this thing, saying concerns.
So
but
he did
said-
review this back.
He did.
That
but
was my
he said
misunderstanding.
that- He said that it's ultimately up to your village engineer. The specifications.
Oh, well, these are pretty standard throughout all other municipalities. So I just, sometimes you can get pretty pricey in insurance and it kind of eliminates some possibilities of contractors doing it, but
I bought all this stuff for myself. You know, you can't go to We Energies, and if you kick over a lantern there,
no.
it's a problem. So the $5 million,
Yeah.
umbrella, it's not extraordinary.
Between statutory and these levels, these are all acceptable.
Okay. But that was it. That was the reason for the red.
I
kinda like talking points.
I'll make a motion to accept this, construction material standard specifications.
Can I amend at this point that we just say 4-mile road? Like.
You don't want it to be a standard for the village. That was the whole intent. Yeah.
No one's specifically project.
No, I don't want to redo this.
You don't
every
want to do
time.
it, then we take, I'll second your motion.
You can, in the bid proposal, you can go above and beyond.
Right.
We can- it can be
Standard.
changed.
We're not at that.
Yes.
This is just setting some sort of ground
get it.
level foundation.
Yep.
We have to start somewhere, otherwise it's all.
That would be in the
So
proposal
we-
itself saying, we are gonna do concrete here on this
Correct.
particular job because it's different from other, and so
We
that
would allow
would
for
be
the-
specified in that.
So we have a motion and it's been seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. All right, so at this point, do we have any referrals?
Actually, 1, 2, and 3 will go to the village board.
Very good. Is there anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, you are making a motion to adjourn.
I'll second Carmen's motion.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for your comment.
I don't know, 9 a.m.
Hey, Scott, can I ask you one question?
Absolutely.
Over?
Yeah.
So after